I, female, 19, had a loving family as a kid. I have faint memories of playing with my elder brother, going on bike rides with my father, and my mother making the tastiest brownies in the world. Those memories are very old and very faint. I'm able to recall most of them only because I have photographs that remind me of the time that was. When I was 4 years old and my elder brother Zach was 11, our parents got divorced. My father took Zach and moved a few states over while I stayed back with my mom. That became my new normal, and I adjusted within a few years because I was very young when my dad and my brother left. My father chose to have nothing to do with me, and I don't know why. But my brother stayed a little in touch. For the next 5 years, I talked to my brother every weekend, and that was the highlight of my week. Despite the distance, I loved my brother, and despite the loneliness, my mother and I lived a good life. She raised me well, was always emotionally involved, and though we were not wealthy by any means, I lived a good childhood. When I was 9, Zach's calls stopped coming. I tried so hard to get in touch with him, but nothing. My father hadn't spoken to me in years by then, so I couldn't really ask him what happened. I just hoped and prayed that Zach was safe. I think that was my very first heartbreak. I loved Zach a lot, and I had kept him involved in my life all this time. I used to run him through my days in school, and my friends and I would note down funny jokes from the week to narrate them to him, and all of that vanished within a second. It was as if he never even existed. It hit my mother hard, too. I think she never really recovered, and that majorly impacted her health. Right after I graduated school and went to college, my mother passed away. I think she was holding on only to see me as an adult. I'm too young to be without parents, I know, but I have good friends and their parents who look out for me, so I'm not completely alone. But yes, it is hard. I feel all alone despite all the support that I have, and there is no one that I can completely trust or rely on. Thankfully, my mother had saved up a large sum of money and had begun teaching me about finances so that I wouldn't turn into one of those people who blow through all their inheritance in 2 years. I am in a fairly employable degree and did not have to take out student loans. I am the sole inheritor of my mother's house, so financially I'm set. My Uncle Peter helps me out and checks in on me every few days. I'm quite close to him and his family, and they are genuinely very nice people. A few weeks ago, I got a message request on Instagram. It was from Zach. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was over the moon because I felt I had some part of my family back. We texted back and forth, and he was quite distraught when he found out about Mom. He told me he wanted to fly down and meet me, and we quickly began making plans. I decided to snoop a bit because I knew nothing about his life, and I stalked him online. A lot. I checked out the profiles of his friends, all the comments, etc. His Instagram, however, was surprisingly new. That made me a bit suspicious, so I started digging, and what I found out was shocking. The man who was texting me was not Zach. He had made a fake digital trail that could make him pass off as Zach, but I am a pro at snooping, and I found out the truth. I did some more digging, and I found out that my dad had remarried after a few years, essentially around the time Zach stopped calling me. His new wife had a son from before getting married to Dad, and this son was impersonating Zach. Once I was able to find out all of this, it became easier for me to track fake Zach. I immediately called up Uncle Peter and his wife and asked them what I should do. Uncle Peter felt that this was my father's doing so that he can manipulate me into parting with a significant portion of my inheritance. This way, both my dad and fake Zach could benefit. I felt like my heart was shattering all over again. I had thought I was finally reuniting with my brother, but what I got in its place was a disgusting ruse for material gains. I could not stand to look this horrid man in the eye, and I wanted to know what happened to Zach. Uncle Peter was furious too, and he asked me to play along and call fake Zach here, where he would be publicly humiliated. The day arrived, and I went to receive Zach from the airport. It was awkward at first, but I tried to cover it up as best I could. I asked him about Dad, about their lives, and why they stopped calling me. He fed me a bunch of bullshit, unbelievable lies, probably thinking I was too naive to understand what was truly happening. Fake Zach was greedy. Within a few hours of reaching home, he started showing his true colors. He was salivating over the house and kept on asking me how old the furniture was, how much the house would cost if I sold it, how much I would get if I planned on renting it out, and other questions along the same lines. I answered truthfully, and I could see his eyes light up because the house is generally worth a lot of money. What he did not know, however, was that Uncle Peter had called up my paternal grandparents and told them about the little stunt that my dad and fake Zach were trying to pull off. While they were in low contact with me, they are people of principles and they do not like it when anyone does sneaky shit like this. Cue the drama. During dinner, fake Zach told me he wanted to talk to me about something important. He said that Dad didn't allow him to stay in touch with me or Mom and that he had always wanted to be a part of our lives. But he was a kid and he was under Dad's control, so he couldn't do much. Then, with tears in his eyes, he told me that he felt really guilty for not being there for Mom and that he just wanted some part of her for memory's sake. He said that he had never found his mother's love, and if he could get a share in her life, he meant inheritance. It would mean that they were still connected somehow. I told him I understood and appreciated his emotions, and that was exactly why I had a very special surprise for him. His eyes lit up, and the surprise walked in. It was as if he had seen a ghost. My paternal grandparents were standing there glaring at him in absolute and unbridled rage. Fake Zach choked on his spit as he fumbled for words. My grandpa grabbed him by the collar and dragged him out of the house, while my grandmother called my dad up in front of everybody and started berating him left, right, and center. It was chaotic, and to be honest, I didn't have the mental capacity for that kind of drama. I thanked my grandparents, but I asked them to let it be and leave me in peace. They apologized for the trouble and hurt I had to go through because of my dad and fake Zach. His real name is Dylan, by the way. They left, and I just hugged Uncle Peter and cried. A few hours later, I got a text from Dylan calling me a bitch and saying that I could have just said no instead of creating this drama. I haven't responded. But now I do feel kind of like an a-hole. AITA? Update. My dad called me. The first time I hear his voice after so many years, the only thing he says is that he is disappointed in me for involving his parents and that I should have known better. That was when all my bottled up feelings came to the surface, and I yelled at him, saying that he failed me as a parent when I was a kid, and he is failing me as a parent when I'm an adult. He told me I was too young to know things and just disconnected the call. I'm so numb and emotionally drained. I wish I had someone, anyone. I'm sorry for the rant. Update 2. Dad's parents called me. They apologized again and told me that Dylan had gotten his girlfriend pregnant and decided that this was the fastest way to get money to raise his child. That was a pretty dumb move in my opinion, but whatever. They also told me that while they had earlier decided to call him and his family to their place and babysit their kid for free, they had rescinded their offer in light of recent events. Dylan is screwed. And now I get why he was so angry in my DMs. I mean, I don't care. He dug his grave himself. The only good thing that has happened is that they told me that Zach really wants to get in touch with me. He'll be coming over next week, and they'll ensure we meet. I hope I'm not in for another heartbreak. Update 3. I met Zach. It was so surreal and so emotional. I hugged him and didn't let go for a few minutes. We talked about each other and our lives and then asked him why he stopped talking to me. He told me that I was a product of an affair my mother had, and when Dad found out, he decided to divorce Mom. Zach was young at that time, so he was not told the reasons for the divorce and hence allowed to keep in touch with me. At 16, when he did find out, he, out of his own volition, chose to cut contact with us because he did not know how to process the news in any other way. Over the years, he had wanted to reach out but felt that I might have forgotten him and that this would be for the best. This was honestly a lot to take in, and I couldn't believe it initially. But this explains the reactions of my father and his side of the family. I'm not angry at my mother because I don't know what drove her to do it, but I also know that it's not my fault. Zach knows it too. For now, we've decided to stay in touch and see how our relationship progresses. He has also offered help if I need a kickstart in my career. All in all, I think I have my brother back, and that's all that matters to me. That's all that has mattered since I was 9 years old. NTA, I would have screwed over fake Zach too. He fricked around and he found out. That's on him. NTA. In this specific situation, you're NTA, but I also feel there is some family secret regarding your parents' divorce that you're not being let into. Whatever the case, fake Zach is a horrible man and he deserves no sympathy from anyone. NTA, I had guessed the cheating angle based on your dad's reactions, and I don't blame him for leaving you. But to send Dylan as Zach and to manipulate you into parting with your inheritance is some twisted shit, and I'd be careful in letting him back into my life if I were you. Be careful with Zach, too. You haven't known him for the better part of a decade. I know you need support and family right now, but don't forget that Zach is essentially a stranger. Take your time to know him, and in the meanwhile, lean to your friends and Uncle Peter and his family for support. All the best, OP. You deserve the best. Next story. My wife always hosts Thanksgiving, and she takes it very seriously. For the past 2 years, my mom has come with her boyfriend, now fiance, Leo. I don't know Leo too well as he doesn't really engage, but the first year my mom came in with a huge bag and was acting really weird and secretive. When we sat down to eat, I noticed that Leo's food looked slightly different from ours. I saw my wife giving it funny looks as well, and I asked. At first, I tried to lie. Then my mom admitted that she had snuck Leo's food from home. I didn't let it go and wanted an answer. She finally admitted that he hates our food and she wanted him to enjoy the holiday. I was pissed but waited to take her aside. She was told to never do that again. This year, she brought Leo again. Neither ate much and they only stayed a little over an hour. When I confronted my mom, she admitted that she was going home to have another dinner with Leo and some friends because she feels so guilty knowing he's willing to spend his whole holiday doing something that makes him miserable for her sake. My wife called her a pick-me. My mom didn't know what that was, so that was an interesting conversation. My mom finally admitted Leo grew up very poor and that is why he hates our food so much because it reminds him of his mother's cooking. I don't even know what the frick that meant, but I could see my wife's blood was boiling, so I told my mom she isn't allowed to come back with Leo. She said, who spends the holidays without their partner? But I said she had to choose between the two of us. I ended up banning her, and she called me an a-hole, and the whole family is furious with me. They say I'm being irrational and should just ignore it because he makes her really happy. Oh, we were also uninvited from the wedding. Lots of people spend a holiday in two places and lots of people are picky eaters. You and your wife are making a mountain out of a molehill. So someone doesn't care for your wife's cooking. Hardly the end of the world. However, if you want to ban your mother from your home and holidays for such a ridiculous reason, it is your business. But YTA for taking such an extreme measure because your wife got butt-ass hurt because they think she's a lousy cook. YTA. Man, I know it sucks that your wife's cooking doesn't feel appreciated, but come on. Sure, they could have brought it up and said they wanted to bring in their own food so you'd know ahead of schedule, yet all they did was do their best not to inconvenience you. They didn't ask you to buy anything specifically for Leo, didn't ask you to be his personal chef for his own meal, didn't even bring it up to the family. They tried to be discreet by bringing him his own food. Tried to just eat less of something he didn't enjoy eating so he could go meet with some other who may matter to your mom and to Leo for food. You and your wife blew it up to this. You felt like the meals you provided weren't good enough, so you lashed out hurt. Kind of pitiful. YTA, it's food. Him being comfortable and fed matters more than your wife's feelings. They were respectful enough to not make a big deal about not wanting your food. The next year, they even listened to you, didn't bring food, and chose not to eat instead. You can't force someone to eat something they don't want. His reasons sound like trauma and is completely valid for not wanting to eat it. I think you overreacted, and banning your mom over such a petty reason makes you the AH. I hope you apologize to both your mom and Leo. Next story. I have quite a few tattoos and specifically wanted some tattoos done in a style native to my community and culture. It's a style suited to stick and poke, and I found an artist who would be well suited to it. I messaged them and they were interested in tattooing me, and also coincidentally, they saw that I was hosting a concert featuring a musician they were interested in and asked if they could come. I said sure. They came for the show, and after the show, tagged along with some of my friends to my apartment to hang out with the musician after. When leaving, the tattoo artist thanked me for my hospitality and the free ticket and said they'd like to tattoo me for free. That sounded great, so I agreed and we set up an appointment. At the appointment, they insisted that I get the tattoo in a different color than what I asked for, and after finishing it, told me it would be $75 and to just e-transfer them. I reminded them about the free tattoo thing, and they said that because they were operating out of a facility, that it cost a lot. And so they couldn't afford for me not to pay, and because I felt bad and pretty embarrassed at that point, I paid. Once the tattoo healed, I noticed it was already fading, and I messaged them, and they agreed to touch it up, but then kept postponing the appointment. At that point, I messaged them pretty annoyed that they needed to uphold their side of the agreement, and I already paid for what was supposed to be a free tattoo. They got really aggressive and blocked me, saying that I was trying to mooch off a person of color. I'm also a person of color. After this, whenever a friend reaches out about stick and poke tattoos and mentions this person, I warn them to not go there. And it turns out someone told them, and they're saying that I'm being an a-hole and to stop bad-mouthing them. AITA? NTA sounds like you have a problem with the quality of their work. People want quality tattoos, and it's not uncommon to share good or bad experiences with others looking to use an artist. How you treat people can also come back to hurt your business, as this artist is finding out. Definitely NTA. You gave the tat artist a lovely evening out. They never should have offered to do the tat for free unless they planned on following through on their commitment to you. She didn't stand by their word, talked you into agreeing to do the tat in a different color than you wanted it to be, and it faded almost immediately. Then they didn't back up their word about fixing it. The tattoo artist is TA, not you. Big time AH, IMO. Very unethical. That is not how a responsible person does business. You have every right to warn people who reach out to you about your experience with this person. I'd send a message back through the person who reported what the tattoo artist said about you, that you're only speaking the truth when you ask for a recommendation. If they would prefer that you recommend them and not tell people what occurred, then they should have honored their commitments. NTA sounds unprofessional. My tattoo artist is my friend, but he runs his own business, so even knowing each other for years, we always settle price estimates first because it's a business transaction. There has been maybe one time where the piece took longer or was more detailed than we previously planned, and I have had no issue paying a few bucks extra, even though he would allow me just to pay the initial estimate. But I'm not going to stiff my buddy for going the extra mile for that piece. For this person to do the work and then tell you to pay up $75 when they never implied there was a change to the verbal contract is just AH behavior, and definitely worth mentioning to any future customers. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.